Hey guys, I am back and today I am going to be doing the fifth and final update for my book roulette series here on YouTube. If you aren't aware, I have been doing a 50 book challenge that I found on Pinterest, and I've been working through them as much as I can. And every month I roll in a certain number of categories. I try to focus on those, and I'm just reading as much as I can to read all 50 books by the end of the year. So I'm going to start off with going over where we were at last month, and then I'm going to jump straight into this month's progress. So this month I read the past 2 months, these are bi-monthly updates, I read 10 books, so I am now at a total of 37 books read so far in this project, and I am going to go over the prompts that I had rolled in last month, which were a book with more than 500 pages, a book of short stories, a book based entirely on its cover, a memoir, and a book you started but never finished. So, starting with those, for the first book that I read to fill a prompt was The Shadow King by Mazza Mengistu. This is a book that I started but never finished. I read about 30 or so pages of it back in like March of 2022, and then just got home, got distracted with other things, and I never picked it back up, but I started it over, and this was a really interesting book. It was a really beautiful book about the Abyssinian, or the Ethiopian revolution or war with, not revolution is not the right word, the invasion of the Italians into what was Abyssinia and is now Ethiopia, and how it is a historical fiction. It's not a memoir, but about how the people worked kind of an uphill battle against these armies that had more ammunition than them, more technology than them, and the United Nations wasn't really doing anything to support the Abyssinians. So this was a really good book, and it kind of talks about how women are often forgotten when we talk about war and tell stories of battles, but in this book, women fought alongside the men eventually because they had to in order to continue fighting for their country, and so it was a really good and thoughtful read. Then, kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, a book with more than 500 pages was Please Don't Be True by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. I think this is a trilogy that has been packaged into one book, but I didn't realize that until I was like halfway through it. This book has 700 pages, and I read it way faster than I was going to. I kind of flew through this. I think the font is just kind of more spaced out than some of the other books that I read, so each page was really quick. And it was also just kind of a light read. It's about a young girl named Alice's junior year of high school, and she's kind of going through these phases and trying to figure out who she is, and it's a really cute book. Then for a memoir, which was the last book that I read to fill a prompt that I had rolled in, I read Becoming by Michelle Obama. So this was a very interesting book because when the Obamas were elected, I was really little. I understood what a president was, and I knew that Obama was our president, but I didn't really understand politics. And even when he was reelected, I was not super involved because I was only like 12, and I was like, I can't vote. I don't really understand what most of these words mean. I was going back and reading a book about that time period with what I understand now as an adult who tries to educate herself. It was really good. I also forgot about how many just truly tragic things happened during Obama's presidency, like the Pulse nightclub shooting, the Columbine shootings. There was a big hurricane, and I'm forgetting which hurricane. I think it was Katrina, but it might have been a different one. A lot of really devastating things. And it was interesting seeing what she did when she was in the White House, because as a young kid at the time, I knew about her Get Up and Move or Let's Move program, but I didn't know that she also had programs with helping veterans and military families. And she also did a program with underrepresented minorities in education. And I like how this book kind of outlines how she fully admits being First Lady isn't actually a job, but she really tried to make the most of the resources that she had being First Lady. And yeah, it was a really heartwarming read, kind of sad. I did cry a couple of times, but it's okay. It was good. It was still a really good read. Then, kind of tangentially, the first book that I actually read since my most recent update was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I struggle with that last name. This was a really cute book. It's, if you have not heard about it and you have not watched the Amazon Prime movie, it's kind of this alternate reality where the son of the President of the United States and the Prince of England fall in love, and it's really cute. It happens in 2020 in this alternate universe, and no pandemic exists. So it's just more lighthearted. It's kind of like what could have been almost if, a lot of things had gone differently. And I thought it was a really, really cute read. The book, it was funny because when you're reading the book, it's mostly from Alex, who is the son of the president's perspective. And then when you watch the movie, you get a different vibe from him because it's not from his perspective. It's more of a movie. You're like an onlooker. And so in the book, he's always getting in trouble. And I'm like, I don't get why everyone always wants to like smack him. He's not that bad. And then in the movie, I was like, yeah, I get it now. I get why people wanted to smack him. But very, very cute, easy read if you just want to like turn your brain off and get absorbed into a fake world where a lot of things are a lot more uplifting. Great read. The other books that I read this month, I'll insert pictures, and I'm actually going to do it this time. I said I was going to last time and I just completely forgot. Was These Violent Delights, which is a kind of science fiction, fantasy / historical fiction book. I'm not sure exactly what people would put it in, but it's set in Shanghai in the 1920s, I believe. And so it's got that like beautiful like flapper style the main character does. And it's these two rival gangs in Shanghai, China. It's very fun, very different from the other things that I've read so far, and I thought it was a really cool read. And I was really struggling with this prompt because I was like, what defines an antonym? Do I have to look up in the thesaurus, and if it's not listed as an antonym, does it not count? And so I chose this one because I don't really find violence a delight. I think we would agree that most people don't, and so a violent delight is, I'm going to call that an antonym, and we're going to say that's good enough. Then the next book that I read, this was actually an audiobook, was Electra, and it's by Jennifer Saint. These Violent Delights were by Chloe Gong. And Electra is based off of kind of this spin-off of the story of Paris and Helen and the Trojan War, but it's from the perspectives of Helen's wife, who is married to Agamemnon, one of the Greek leaders and warriors in the Trojan War. So Clytemnestra is Helen's sister and Agamemnon's wife. Then their daughter Electra, their youngest daughter, and then Paris's sister Cassandra. If you're not familiar with Greek mythology, Cassandra was cursed by Apollo to have the gift of foresight or gift of future telling, but no one ever believes her. So she is very accurately predicting everything that's going to happen, but people brush it off as, oh, she's mad, oh, she's crazy. And so it was a really interesting read, and it kind of focuses on how the other people in the books were affected. And the book definitely has this kind of angle of like, these men are kind of doing whatever they want, and these women are having to pick up the pieces and strategize their life around it. And it was a really interesting read. I did listen to it, and it was a good car road trip book because it was pretty good pacing, and you know the general story, but you don't really know. I had never heard of Clytemnestra before listening to this book, so it was a cute, it was like, the ending's not very cute, but it was a Greek tragedy. And then the next book that I read was The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. This I used for a book that's set in the future. This book was kind of a depressing read. I'm not going to lie. It's set in 2024. The United States and the world kind of has gone to crap, just completely. And there's like war, and there's no real sense of like structure. There's no justice system. The police, you have to like pay for them to investigate something, and their investigation skills aren't good, so people just don't even bother. People have to live in these like walled communities in order to have safety. There's a lot of like really high wealth and then just complete poverty and homelessness, and anyone who's in between is just kind of sandwiched in this weird way where they have enough money to not be homeless, but they barely have enough money to live. There's a lot of really sad themes in this book, and it's about this young woman who believes very strongly in this kind of alternative belief system centered around God. Her community falls apart, and so she wants to go and create her own community around this belief system that she's created. And so it's them just kind of like walking. The woman who wrote it, Octavia E. Butler, she passed away. She wrote Kindred. She's an incredible author, and she wrote a lot of like science fiction and dystopian future novels. And so this was kind of going into 2024. I'm like, please don't be a prediction. And then the next book I read was Benty by Netty Okur, and this is a novella, and it is about a young girl from Earth who gets selected to go to this prestigious intergalactic university. So she goes, and on her way there, her ship is attacked by this alien race that is trying to retrieve something from the university, and there's a lot of unanswered questions at the end of the novella. It's a series of 3 novellas that are only about 100 pages each, so I think if you read all 3 of them, it would be kind of like a book. But it was still really interesting, and then the last 2 were A Perfect Vintage by Chelsea Fagan, and that book is so good. It's got a love triangle, it's got feminism, it's got sexy Frenchmen, it's got wine tasting, beautiful estates, and I loved it so much. It was a really good book, and Chelsea Fagan this is her first nonfiction published. All of the proceeds for October, I believe, were going to humanitarian aid in Israel. So now is a good time to read her book, or to purchase her book. I know I'm posting it this kind of at the end of the month, but it's still a very good book and worth a purchase year round. If you have a friend who is really into romance novels, I would look at this for them for like Christmas or something, because it's a really well thought out, well written romance novel. And then the last book that I read / listened to was The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, and I used this to fill the prompt, a play, in case I forgot to mention. Red, White, and Royal Blue was a book with a color in the title. Parable of the Sower was a book set in the future. Electra was a book with a 1-word title. Benty was a book with non-human characters, and A Perfect Vintage was a book published this year in 2023. Okay, I don't think I mentioned all of those. So, and then the last one is a play, and The Importance of Being Earnest. Listening to this was really good because the actors did sound different enough to where you could hear all of the different words, and It's very satirical. And then I listened to the scholar talking about what we think Oscar Wilde meant when he was writing this, and that section after the end of the play, and it makes a lot of sense. There's a big theme of truth telling and what really is the truth throughout the book, as well as satire around courting and people of a certain social status of that time. So it was a really cute play, and I'm done with that prompt as well. So I have 37 books. That means there's 13 books left to be read. The 2 rolled in prompts that I did not get to this month were a book based entirely on its cover and a book of short stories. I'm going to roll in 3 more prompts just to have those to try and focus on for the next 2 months, but realistically I'm hoping I can read 13 books in the next 2 months. That sounds like a lot. But other than that, okay, so we're gonna go in. I moved the prompts that I have left that are not rolled in or filled into a column on the side, and I'm just going to pull, that's 11 prompts. I'm going to pull 3 numbers between 1 and 11. So that we don't have to do the, oh, nope, that one's already filled. Nope, that one's already filled game that we were playing last time. So 1, 11, and I want 3 prompts. And I got the prompts 1, 2, and 11. So 1 here in my new organizational system is a book that became a movie. Number 2 is a book that a friend recommended. And number 11 is a banned book. So there we go. A book a friend recommended and a banned book. There we go. So we're just going to replace those. And now my 5 rolled in prompts are a book that became a movie, which is the one I'm actually reading right now, so that'll definitely be done. A book of short stories, a book a friend recommended, a memoir, and a banned book. So these are the prompts that I'm going into November with. I'm really hoping, I think I might push out the finale for this project by 2 or so weeks in order to hit all 50 books. I'm going to be out of town for the last portion of December, and I'm not going to be able to film. So that means I either need to film it before I leave, which would only give me about 6 weeks to read 13 books, or I can push it back 2 weeks, and then I have, 10 weeks to read 13 books. So I think that's what I'm going to do, because even though it won't technically all be read in 2023, it'll give me a little bit more time, and I think it'll be a more entertaining update if I can actually get to all of these prompts. So that is everything that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you are enjoying this series and that you pick up one of these titles that I talked about today. And other than that, I hope you have an incredible, awesome day wherever you are, and that I get to see you in a future video. Thanks, guys.